It's so cold. I'm so tired. Feather.
Fall went on and began to organize the nets and prepared to cast them out into the water. He lifted the bundled nets over the port side and tried to hold them as far out as possible. Suddenly, the winds changed and a current rammed into the side of the vessel, knocking the ship around as if it were just a toy. Fall was effortlessly thrown across the deck of the now tilted ship. He tumbled back toward the starboard side and overboard into the water, only to be grabbed by his sister, who had a grip on the mast to port line. She pulled him back up onto the deck as Feather struggled to grab hold of the rapidly spinning wheel. He tried to grab a hold of the spokes, though the speed of the wheel hitting his hands left a few small fractures in his bones, forcing him to let go again in pain. The ship shifted again, causing everyone to lose their footing as water began to flow onto the deck. Feather stood up again, ignoring the pain in his swollen hands. He grabbed the wheel for a second time, as a crack echoed out from his palms. He screamed out in agony as he put all of his strength into the persistent wheel. It was a losing battle. He opened his eyes and looked out over the deck to see his struggling family. He saw Fall desperately trying to pull the boom into an optimal position, failing as the rope burned through his hands, dyeing itself a deep red. The sun began to fade as the bowsprit aimed itself at the black clouds. This was Feather's chance to rise above, to save his family, to save Fall. He was being challenged by the storm, and Feather solely believed that in that moment, the storm was looking for him to prove his strength. Like how a master may challenge a student to spar as a demonstration of skill. Feather closed his eyes, gritted his teeth, and pushed even harder on the wheel spokes. The fractured bone in his hand stabbed through his skin and into the wooden wheel. However, Feather remained unfazed. His eyes were locked on Fall, who was still using every inch of this weak body to pull the boom. Feather pressed harder into the wheel, and it began to turn in his favor, leveling the ship and giving Fall the help he needed to finally move the boom. Unfortunately, the massive strength of Feather was too much for the wood to handle. The rudder snapped, ripping the bone from his flesh and throwing him into the splintered banister. All hope seemed to be lost, as the ship now had been pulled into the storm's water, and without a wheel, there was no chance of escape. Line snapped, and the boom came swinging around at immense speed, knocking several of Fall's siblings off the ship. The sail tore from its bows, and the wet canvas violently whipped in the ever-changing wind, as if it were a flag. Fall looked across the ship to the wheel, searching for his big brother. His heart dropped when he saw him lying motionless on the deck, his wet hair drowning out his bloody face. Fall had never seen him in such a stated defeat. He truly believed nothing could take down someone as strong as Feather. The sense of such a brutal defeat broke his heart, so much so he could barely stand. Against the thrashing of the ship, Fall stumbled his way over to his brother to try and save him. He did not know he was dead or not, but at the very least he wished to die beside Feather. To be within his warm and loving embrace one last time is all he wanted. Surely Feather would be there in the afterlife to continue to protect him, to lead him as he has always done. Tears swelled and Fall's eyes. He had just a few more meters left to reach Feather, but his attempt resulted in failure, as the angry tattered sail became too much for the hull to support and the ship snapped. Both rolled down the deck into the water, Fall sinking deep down into the relentless sea. Fall desperately tried to swim upwards. Water filled his sinuses, and his lungs burned from the salt. He rose from the water, gasping for air, just for it to be stolen by the most terrible sight. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. Not even in his most terrible nightmares could he ever have imagined such horror. His body froze and shook. It looked like Feather's body was floating in the air. A flash of lightning revealed his chest to be split open like the wings of an angel. His heart remained beating, skewered at the end of a splintered plank that had split from the deck and stabbed entirely through Feather's chest. His face was pale and relaxed, and his mouth fell wide open, which made him appear even more ghostly, or perhaps more angelic. Fall cried out to him, screaming his soul into the rain and sacrificing his last breath in Feather's name. As the air left his lungs, Fall's eyes closed, and he fell back into the black water, engulfed by the sea.